Welcome back to the Garden Hutch. Today we're going to talk about my 4 favorite vegetables to start in early September. Let's get going. Well, early September here in Zone 7B means that the oppressive temperatures will soon be over. What I mean by that is triple digits. So the stuff we're going to talk about today, it can survive in, upper 80s, low 90s for most of the time and do just fine. So that's why we start them this time of year. The 4 vegetables we're going to discuss today are lettuce, mustard greens, beets, and turnips. So the first vegetable we'll talk about is lettuce. Now, if you watch our channel, you know that we love lettuce. We start growing it as soon as we possibly can, and we stop growing it as soon as it frosts over and kills everything. So that usually starts somewhere between February all the way up until the end of November. Here in 7B, it's really difficult to grow lettuce in the hottest part of the summer, but we're rapidly approaching the time where we can get large beds of lettuce. So what we like to do is we like to start our first round of lettuce indoors. We'll move it to the trays into the greenhouse and let it live there for about, a week and a half, 2 weeks, just to get nice and established so it doesn't burn up in case we have like a hot streak. Every once in a while here in 7B, it'll get in the mid 90s around mid-September. So you want to make sure your plants are established before that happens. Once we get those in the ground, we'll direct sow the lettuce from there on out. We usually will try to space it out evenly and overseed just a bit so that we can thin it out and make sure that we have coverage through all of our gardens. Because remember, even though it's fall, the sun is still out, you want to make sure you conserve as much water in your beds as possible. Now, of course, the lettuce, we'll harvest them as much as we possibly can all the way up until, and then if we have the time right before it freezes, we'll try to fill a couple containers and keep it in the crisper. It'll last in there for about 4 weeks. The second vegetable on our list today are mustard greens. Mustard greens are a favorite here on the homestead, and they're pretty versatile. We like to overseed our mustard greens. So what we'll do is we'll start them just like we do our lettuce for the first round. We'll put them in, and even whenever we put in the plugs that we've already started, we're going to plant them relatively thick. The reason for this are baby mustard greens are fantastic in a tossed salad. So as the season goes along, we'll be able to use the mustard green with the rest of our greens and kind of enrich our salads from a taste and vitamin standpoint. Now, as you thin out the mustard greens, they're going to start getting bigger. After a certain point, you don't want to add them to your salads anymore, but they're excellent for a side dish if you cook them with smoked pork, or you can make them in a main meal. If you just take a dozen eggs or so, cook down some mustard greens and cook those two together. That's one of our favorites here when it gets cold. So number 3 on the list are beets. Beets are one of our favorites, and this last spring we did relatively well growing beets, and we realized that you can stick them in a gallon bag in your crisper and they last for months. In fact, our spring beets we pulled in the middle of April to make room for our summer vegetables, and we just finished eating the last beet, and it was nice and crispy and sweet still. So that's something that's really encouraging. For me though, I've got to get better at growing beets. So what I did this time around was I started the beets indoors, made sure the seeds sprouted, moved them into trays into the greenhouse, and I left them in there for a couple weeks to get nice and established. Now, the difference between the way I do my beets and my greens and lettuce and such is I do not overseed my beets. The reason for this are while beet greens are delicious in tossed salads, it's not necessary to overseed them because you don't have to necessarily thin them out in order to eat the greens like you do the other vegetables. Because of the way that beets grow, you can just harvest the leaves off the beets that are actually growing as they get bigger. Because they're also really delicious even when the leaves get big, so you don't have to worry about running into that wall like you do with some of the other ones. For us, we prefer our beets raw on salads, and every once in a while I'll throw them in the oven and roast them at 450 for about 45 minutes or so, and we'll toss that over the top of some rice with grilled steak or something like that. So the fourth and final vegetable on our list today are turnips. Now, turnips are the most versatile vegetable on this list. When we plant our turnips, we overseed them so that as we thin them out, we can use the turnip greens in tossed salads. They are delicious and they add a really good taste comparison whenever you put them next to the mustard greens and the beet greens and the lettuces. Overall, it makes for a fantastic salad. And as you thin them out and they start maturing, you can also cook the turnip leaves much like you do the mustard leaves. Now, again, I don't care so much for turnips with eggs, but I do love turnips with neck bones or with salt pork. And that leaves the turnip root, which is probably one of our all-time favorite. So the thing about turnip roots is they're going to come out of your fall garden right about the same time as your potatoes and your carrots. So it makes a fantastic beef stew to add the potatoes, carrots, and turnips together. The thing about turnips is, in our experience anyway, they don't quite keep as long as the potatoes and carrots. So it makes a fantastic addition to your winter stores because you can simply eat the turnips and save the potatoes and the carrots for later in the wintertime. Well, I hope you all enjoyed our list of 4 vegetables we grow in early September. Let me know in the comments down below if you have any vegetables I didn't list that you like to start this time of year. As always, we appreciate you folks for hanging out with me today. Until next time, I hope you all take care of yourselves. Peace.